This is very important, folks, and you can actually participate in what I'm about to say. On April 1st, 2025, just a few weeks away, in the state of Wisconsin, a major swing state, there is a huge, not a legal fight, but a political fight dealing with who will sit on the Wisconsin Supreme Court. It is a 7-justice, 7-judge Supreme Court, and the outcome of this election on April 1st will dictate, will the conservatives control the Wisconsin Supreme Court or will the loony liberals? Big deal. Let's talk about what it means for all of your rights out there. And this is a big deal because what happens in Wisconsin actually will matter in Washington, D.C. and nationwide. You'll see what I'm talking about when we come back. Hey folks, I'm Mark Smith, host of the 4 Boxes Diner, proud American gun owner, constitutional attorney, member of the United States Supreme Court Bar, and proud to say the winner of the top voice of the Second Amendment in America at the 2025 Gundies Awards. Thank you for your support. I hope to continue to work hard to fight for our rights to keep and bear arms and all of our constitutional rights. All right, folks, so this is a little bit different video than what I usually talk about. That is, this is a political video in the sense of I'm going to talk about an election, specifically a judicial election. That's right. In some parts of the United States, judges are selected through elections. And in many respects, by the way, that's what we would want, but that's a topic of a different day. What we want to talk about today is the Wisconsin Supreme Court. The Wisconsin Supreme Court, as we sit here right now, has 7 judges. There are 7 judges on the Wisconsin Supreme Court. Right now, the liberals, the progressives, control the Wisconsin Supreme Court 4-3. 4-3. However, one of those liberal judges is stepping down and is retiring. There will be an election for that open seat in just a few weeks in the state of Wisconsin for that seat. That race pits 2 judges, state court judges, against each other to be elevated to sit on the Wisconsin Supreme Court. You have the sort of Republican conservative Brad Schimmel, who Elon Musk and others are supporting. Presumably Donald Trump will come out and endorse him as well. I don't know if he has yet, but I'm sure he will at some point. Versus the progressive liberal Susan Crawford, who has done work for, public unions out there, voting rights organizations, which is just really kind of, my experience, kind of anti-voter ID and stuff like that, and for Planned Parenthood. So basically you have the NRA endorsed Brad Schimmel, the former Attorney General of Wisconsin, who's now a county judge. He is NRA endorsed Brad Schimmel against Susan Crawford, who is the liberal. The winner of this seat will be a huge deal, will play a huge deal in the future of American politics. This is not an exaggeration, folks, and that's why I'm shooting this specific video, because this is such a big deal. It may be sort of the sort of thing that your friends in Wisconsin and others may not understand the significance of it, and they may not turn out because they may not understand that what happens with this Wisconsin Supreme Court race on April 1st, 2025, is going to have huge ramifications for national politics. And what do I mean by this? Well, there are several issues right now that are percolating through the Wisconsin state courts that will eventually get decided by the Wisconsin Supreme Court. However, it's going to be currently constituted, in several months. One of those issues, and we're going to talk about a few other issues as well, one of those issues is the redrawing, potentially, of the federal congressional districts in Wisconsin. What does that mean right here and right now? As you know, under the United States Census, which is constitutional as part of the U.S. Constitution, there's a census taken every 10 years. And that census identifies the population of all the states. Based on the census, the number of House of Representatives seats is allocated by population to each of the various 50 states. Right now in the state of Wisconsin, there are 8 House members. There's obviously 2 U.S. senators. That doesn't change from state to state, you know that. But in the House of Representatives, where the Republicans have a very, very narrow margin of just a couple seats. There are eight House seats that are been allocated to the entire state of Wisconsin. As we sit here right now, folks, in Wisconsin, there are six Republican House members from Wisconsin. There are two Democrat House members from Wisconsin. If, however, the Liberals get control of the court after the April 1st, 2025 election for the swing seat, it is anticipated and predicted by many observers that the current lines that allow there to be 6 Republican House members from Wisconsin and 2 Democrat House members from Wisconsin, it is anticipated and predicted that the new Liberal controlling Supreme Court of Wisconsin will require, for various legal reasons, to redraw those 8 House lines and thereby make it easier for the Democrats to win, and by doing so, flip Wisconsin from a 6-2 Republican House advantage to a 4-4 tie, and that 2 vote swing difference, that 2 House seat difference, where the Republicans lose 2 House seats in Wisconsin and the Democrats gain 2 House seats in Wisconsin in the 2026 midterms, could that alone, if nothing else changes, that alone could cause the United States House of Representatives based in the U.S. Capitol in Washington, D.C., to flip from a Mike Johnson-controlled Republican House of Representatives to a Hakeem Jeffries-controlled Democrat-run House of Representatives, which would be a big difference in terms of whether or not President Trump can get his agenda through or not. So that alone means you need to be focusing on the Wisconsin Supreme Court. And if you have friends or family in Wisconsin, you need to urge them to get out there and vote on April 1st, because it's going to be a big deal who wins this race. There's also a lot of money flowing into this race. Elon Musk and other Elon Musk-related PACs. There's a lot of Democrat PACs. There's a lot of money flowing into these races, or into this race. I should let you know that in 2023, there was a big race between a conservative Dan Kelly and a liberal judge, and the liberal judge won in 2023. And let me tell you what happened in Wisconsin between 2023 and the 2024 presidential election. Let me just give you some of the issues that basically flipped from being upheld in a conservative way to reversed by a then newly created liberal Supreme Court of Wisconsin. Because for many years, the Wisconsin Supreme Court was controlled by sort of conservative Republicans. And then in that election in April of 2023, it flipped and then became controlled by left-wing activists. And between the time it flipped in 2023 and the November 2024 presidential election season in 2024, some of the things that occurred were the following. Laws that prohibited the use of drop boxes were knocked out, requiring the use of drop boxes for voting in 2024. Number one, certain districts that were drawn for the Wisconsin State House, not the federal House in Washington, D.C., but the Wisconsin legislative bodies, the Wisconsin Senate, the Wisconsin Legislature, the Wisconsin House of Representatives within the Wisconsin State Capitol, those lines had to be redrawn in a way that was much more favorable to the Democrats by virtue of a court order by the then newly constituted left-wing judicial activist Wisconsin Supreme Court. So again, the adoption of drop boxes, which was a terrible thing in 2020, and they're bringing them back in 2024 by virtue of the Wisconsin Supreme Court. The redrawing of state lines for state House and Senate races within the state of Wisconsin, making it easier for the Democrats to win. That may happen going forward. The then liberal Supreme Court of Wisconsin brought back collective bargaining for government employees. And by the way, for those of you who don't understand why this is important, collective bargaining is about having unions being able to use their economic power to negotiate against private interests. So if you have, let's say, a multi-billion-dollar company owned by a bunch of billionaires or whatever on one side, and you have union on the other side, they negotiate, and the argument is that they bring sort of equal bargaining power to the table. But collective bargaining rights, which the Wisconsin Supreme Court lefties brought back, we're not talking about private sector collective bargaining, but the law, or basically the law that was overturned that then allowed collective bargaining negotiations by government employees. Hear what I just said? The left-wing Wisconsin Supreme Court that was then made left-wing in 2023 has knocked out a law that prevented collective bargaining rights among government employees in Wisconsin. It knocked that law out, giving government employees in Wisconsin the ability to collectively bargain. Now, the problem with that is there is no other side when you're dealing with government pay raises, government benefits. And what do I mean by that? Just think about it for 1 second. You have government employees unionized with collective bargaining rights negotiating against whom? They're negotiating against other government employees. Hear the problem? That's the problem. It's such a crazy idea to say that government employees need collective bargaining rights to negotiate against government employees for pay raises when everyone is on the same side. They're all on the same economic side of more government, more money, more benefits, less work. This idea is so obvious that even liberal progressive President Franklin Delano Roosevelt opposed having collective bargaining rights for government employees and government employee unions on the grounds that it's insane to say that they don't have economic power when they're literally negotiating with like the mayor, the Congress, the city council, whatever. You see what I'm saying? They're the governor, they're dealing with government employees, negotiating with government employees. You don't need collective bargaining rights when everyone is on the same side of the negotiation. Everyone works for government when you're dealing with government employees, and everyone's willing to vote themselves raises. It's a much different dynamic than when you're dealing with private sector unions negotiating against private sector employers, where the incentives are arguably different. But not when the government dealing with government. And nevertheless, this crazy liberal lunatic Wisconsin Supreme Court for the last 2 years has brought back collective bargaining rights for government unions. Just crazy. And beyond that, the last thing to keep in mind, that the liberal Wisconsin Supreme Court between 2023 and 2024 kicked off the presidential ballot. They kicked off the presidential ballot Green Party candidate Jill Stein, which, as you recall, the fight there was that Jill Stein had qualified for the Wisconsin ballot to get electoral votes for the presidency. But because having her on the ballot might take away votes from Joe Biden and then down the road Kamala Harris, the liberal Wisconsin Supreme Court knocked Jill Stein off the ballot for Wisconsin, giving Biden Kamala Harris a big win. Good news is, of course, Donald Trump was able to overcome and win Wisconsin. But the fact that this Wisconsin Supreme Court, their 4-3 liberal majority between 2023 and November 2024, and even today, the sort of thing that they've been doing just goes to show you how important it is going forward, in my opinion, that the Wisconsin Supreme Court be controlled by conservative Republicans that are endorsed by, for example, the National Rifle Association, which Brad Schimmel is endorsed, while Susan Crawford is obviously on the other side of the political aisle. So again, if anyone's looking to get involved out there in Wisconsin with donations or whatever, you should pay attention to this race one way or another, because whatever happens in this Wisconsin Supreme Court race is going to dictate, in many respects, the future of our great country, and by extension, the future of our Constitution, and yes, indeed, our right to keep and bear arms. So anyway, I wanted to bring this important race to your attention because it's at an odd time of year, meaning April 2025. It often gets overlooked, but you should not overlook this. So if you're interested in the Second Amendment, if you're interested in national politics, make sure you follow carefully and do what you need to do involving this Wisconsin Supreme Court race between Brad Schimmel and Susan Crawford. And again, Brad Schimmel is endorsed by the National Rifle Association's organization there. I don't know if it's the PAC or which group it is, but by the NRA specifically. And Susan Crawford, needless to say, is not endorsed by anybody on the right that I am aware of, for obvious reasons based on her background. So there you have it, folks. Hope you learned a little bit something here today about the Wisconsin Supreme Court and the fact that there are elections out there where people do vote for judges. Make sure you follow me on X at @4boxesdiner. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube and Rumble. We're trying to get to 200,000 subscribers on YouTube, and I look forward to talking to all of you again very soon here at the 4 Boxes Diner.
Orders up. Table 2A.